Hey guys, it's Steven here. Welcome back to another video. Before I get into it though, I want to say download OneFootball right now. Click that beautiful link in the description or scan that QR code next to my face and help and nourish your football knowledge. All the Manchester City breaking news will be sent straight to your phone and you can keep up to date with all the news from across the world of football and get all the stats and information that you need to help win you those football arguments. Of course, as well, it helps support my channel, so it'd be massively appreciated. It costs absolutely nothing and it's a wonderful app. You will not regret it, I promise you. I've been using it for over 4 years now personally myself. Download OneFootball for absolutely free by clicking that link in the description. What are you waiting for? Hello people, welcome back to another video. Previous me there giving OneFootball a mention. Download it in the link in the description. Look at this lineup. Look at this beautiful lineup. We've got a very big topic to discuss today. Weirdly enough, it feels like everyone's on the same wavelength because Asan, as soon as he jumped on stream, was like, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. And it's probably because we've got Atletico, Liverpool. And it's that business stage of the season. So I wanted to do a video today where I get essentially the Berts assemble and we discuss what is Manchester City's strongest 11 for one big game. We've got a whole wonderful bunch of guests. We've got Mulv here from Noisy Neighbours. How you doing, Mulv?
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve.
My pleasure, mate. Asan, now you're representing 9320.
Hello, mate.
Hello. And of course, Andrew Detmer from Main Road Ramble. You guys all good? You looking forward to this? Got any surprises in line for us?
Definitely.
I don't think I have any surprises, but I'm happy to defend why there are no surprises, I guess.
Okay, that's interesting. So basically, the context of this video is that I thought, given the games going up, that would be a good idea to try and work out what we all thought was City's strongest 11. Obviously, it's really hard to say because form, there's always context for every game. You never know who you're playing and so on. But the brief that I gave these wonderful gentlemen alongside me was, if you had a big game tomorrow, everyone was fit, everyone was in form, who would you pick in that big game to rely on? So I know it's really vague and it depends who you're playing on, but I can't predict the future. So this is what I said to these people, these beautiful people here, and they all came up with a team, and we all going to discuss that. And honestly, they hadn't seen each other's teams before they chose them as well. So it'd be interesting to see what everyone reckons. Who wants to go first, by the way? Anyone in particular? I'll go last. Andrew's going to go first. Okay, so let me just transition over to the other screen. Quickly, before we go, by the way, how was this? Was it easy for everyone? How did it feel?
No, I could change my team now.
I felt like there is one position that I debated on, and that is the only one for me that was a debate of which two players were making it.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
I picked 7 out of 11 in their exact positions immediately.
Yeah.
The other 4 that gave me.
Yeah, I did my team last, so because obviously I saw you guys, and I was like, I'm just gonna have to vary up a little bit, which we'll get to in a bit, because otherwise it's an exact replica. Right, so we'll jump over to the other screen, and I'll be bringing Andrew's team up right now. Andrew, so when it comes up, mate, talk us through your team, why you've gone for, and what the rationale behind it. The big reveal in 3, 2, 1. Oh, I've just got ready your screen. That's not how I did it. 1 second. 3, 2, 1. There we go. There's Andrew's team. Representing Main Road Ramble.
Television.
Yeah, there we go. So
Good team.
What are you thinking? What are you thinking, man?
So I mean, obviously, keeper, easiest decision in the world. Right back, easiest decision in the world. Although I guess that one I did have the thought of. Walker is still banned for one more Champions League game, right?
Yeah.
So, really?
Is he?
Yeah.
Yes, he is actually.
I think so. Yeah, because he picked it up at the end of the group stage, and so it was 3 match. Yeah. So it was a 3-match ban. So technically he can't play for the first leg against Madrid, but that's fine.
Man.
Yeah. But all that would do for me is I would switch, like for that game, all I would do is switch Cancelo over on the right and bring in Zinchenko. It wouldn't change anything else for me. But the back line for me right now, if cards aren't a thing, if injuries aren't a thing, like everyone is fit, this is my back line for any game. Hands down. There's no question. There's no debate. It was instantaneous for me. DM, same thing. Rodri, I don't think you can debate how good he has been this season and how important he has been to the team. KDB and Bernardo, to me, is the free eight. The 2 free 8s makes the most sense. It's the most balanced. It allows KDB to do KDB things, but does not leave Rodri stranded alone the way he has been at times this season when Bernardo isn't the other free 8. Mahrez has probably been it's crazy to say because I think you can make an argument for multiple players being our best player, but Mahrez has been world class this season and just scoring goals left, right, and center. Sterling on the left for me, and maybe that one's going to be a little bit spicy for some people, particularly because there is somebody else who I think has been really good this season. But for me, it was still Sterling I'll get back to. And then Foden, because I'm not going to not play Foden. And I think he is the best false line option, not named De Bruyne, but I want De Bruyne's passing further back to unlock teams. But yeah, so Sterling for me is the one, like, I don't think it's a surprise. It wasn't hard for me to make that call. Other than that, I looked at whether it would be Sterling or Grealish as my left winger. I love Grealish. I think he's going to be an incredible player for City. I think people that want to, kind of talk shit about him don't know what they're talking about and are looking at, like Pep said, like just focusing on stats when that shouldn't be what you look at. But when I looked at the numbers, other than keeping the ball, which Grealish is better than Sterling at, and I will admit, every single statistic that you would want to measure your left winger by, Sterling is just a better version of Grealish. And I think sometimes we focus too much on when Sterling loses the ball. And we do not acknowledge everything that him trying things that sometimes will lose the ball brings to this team. And when I'm talking about a big game and a lineup for a big game, to me, I could not have a guy who is on the top 10 list of all-time Man City goal scorers, particularly in a team that's going to need goals to be scored in these games. When we don't have a recognized out-and-out 9, if we had an Aguero, maybe you can say, yeah, you know what? Sterling is phenomenal. He does all these things, but in a big game, do you want to risk losing the ball? Grealish can do a lot of that stuff. Let's put him in. For me, it was a simple matter of, we're going to need goals. Put Mahrez on the right, Sterling on the left, Foden through the middle. That solves that problem.
Well, go on.
Andrew, I'm wondering, did you have an opponent in mind when you put this together?
I did not. I strictly went, if I am looking at a team and I know I have to, basically the scenario of like City has to win this game or insert bad consequence here and you don't know who it's going to be, like this is who I would pick.
So opponent is not a consideration for you. This would be, you'd play these against anybody.
I guess the point is more because it's so hard to do. It's just like if you had to average all opponents out, which one would be the strong? Which 11 would be the most reliable? I guess if it was a draw of teams, you had no idea what it was going to be. It's like which 11 players you'd have most faith in on the pitch at that moment.
I really
how it works though.
Yeah, no. This is not how I put my team together, right? So we're in the business end of the season, and we're talking about Champions League knockout ties, and we're talking about playing Liverpool.
Do you know what? It can be that as well. It can be that, definitely.
No. So Asan, sorry to be.
Let me finish. The team I put together was a team that I would feel comfortable in a big knockout Champions League tie or against Liverpool.
So that is what I mean. But I'm saying, like, I wasn't thinking about particular opponent. I'm saying if it's a big game and we have to win it and I just don't know who it's going to be, these are the guys that I'm confident in. We'll take it to any team we're going to be in that scenario.
And that's transferable to Liverpool or Atletico anyway, isn't it? So it's the exact same mental anyway.
I would have a tweak. Atletico versus Liverpool. I would have one tweak and one player. So
who would that be? Is that in your team? So we get to that in a minute, or is it one of those?
No, I've got the exact same team as Andrew.
Have you? So we'll very briefly bring yours up. Obviously, it makes no difference. But there's your logo anyway, so it's there. So you went for the exact same team.
Exact same team, but I did have Liverpool in mind because I knew we'd play them twice, and potentially again, depending on how things go. So same team as Andrew. It's easier. Like I said, it's 7 players. I was immediately able to put in my 11 in exact positions. Once I got to deciding who the 8th was, it became very difficult. So was the 7 that were easy,
basically, out of curiosity, essentially.
Yeah, the 7 were the back 5: Ederson, Walker, Stones, Diaz, Cancelo. Or I guess the back 6: Rodri, and then Mahrez.
Okay,
because
Mahrez. I thought you were going to say Bernardo there, if I'm being honest, but Mahrez is interesting.
See, Bernardo is the tweak for me, but I'll get to that. So Mahrez just been undroppable and unplayable, so he has to feature. But then it was, what do you do with the rest of the forwards, including the 2 8s? And because I had Liverpool in mind, I knew it was going to be a very open game and we're going to have to cover a lot of ground. So I went for Bernardo next to KDB, just for the legs. and the dynamism. When I think of Liverpool, I think of some of Bernardo's best performances for City. So he had to be in there.
Yeah.
And if Bernardo's one, then I want KDB to be the other one next to him in the 8s. So then it was I've got Mahrez on the right. So who's the 9 and who's the 11, I suppose, the left wing. So I've gone with Foden as the 9. I think he's our best all-round number 9. And then I went for Sterling, which I think is pretty controversial on the left wing. I don't know if you guys looked at some of the tweet responses to this, the tweet for this video, but there was a singular lineup that kept coming out, and it had.
Is that my lineup?
Is it your lineup, Asan?
I think it might well be.
All right, cool.
Lineup.
Don't go check the tweet replies yet. We'll get there in a minute.
Okay. So let me talk just a couple of a little bit of the logic behind some of my stuff. So the one guy I wavered on a little bit was Cancelo, because he's I say you sort of live by the sword and die by the sword with him. I went back and watched the match at Anfield earlier in the season, the 2-2, and both Liverpool's goals came from that left side, and it was Laporte, Cancelo. And it did look a bit suspect. So I thought about it for a bit. Well, what can you do? You can put Zinchenko over there. That might give you a little bit more solidity and control, but you lose a little bit going forward. What do you do with Laporte? Maybe if you put Diaz in the left-sided centre-back, Cancelo looks a bit better. Perhaps maybe you cover yourself a little bit by moving Diaz over there instead of having Laporte there.
Can we discuss that for a second?
Yeah, go for it, Andrew.
So when you were thinking about Cancelo, because there have been a few goals scored when you think about down our left side, and in almost every single instance, when it's Cancelo's side that is giving up the goal, it's because Laporte is playing next to him.
Mm.
And when I put this team together, for me, the two center backs, it wasn't even a debate, because the great thing about Stones and Diaz is that they will 100% take control of their sides of the defense. They will step up. They will be commanding. They will communicate with their fullbacks and be prepared. My biggest complaint about Laporte, and it has been my complaint about Laporte since probably the first full season he was with us, is that Laporte at times will not take command and will not mentally kind of step up in a way that I think you have to have for a big game like this. And it's why
that's interesting,
the big games that the moments that we all can think about when Laporte has those screw ups, they're always in big games where the pressure is on Laporte to not make a mistake. And that's when he does.
I just don't think that, I think that if you're going to play with Cancelo, if you're going to play with a fullback who you want to give license to roam, then you need a centre back who's just going to look after his mate's side, who's going to be switched on enough to go, I've got my problems, but then I've also got to deal with all of his problems so that he's got license to go forward. And for me, Laporte doesn't take responsibility enough in those situations. And I think that we get away with it in 80% of the games because people aren't really attacking us, right? So it's fine. Laporte can almost play like a deep playmaker because of his passing. But ultimately, when it comes to, that's why for me, we had to almost define a big game, because the big games are the games where coming the other way, you're going to have talent coming at you and you're going to have players who can hurt you. For me, in that situation, I agree with what you both said, that I think having Diaz on that side makes way more sense if you're going to play Cancelo.
So what is it, in your guys' opinion, what's the reason why Pep is essentially favouring Laporte at the moment? I don't think that's an unfair conclusion, because it does feel that way. Stones has been sat on the bench for most of the season watching from the outside in, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say either that Stones was a massive part of our Champions League run last year. He was phenomenal alongside Diaz, but he has found himself essentially behind Laporte. He's only started from, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's about 10 games in the Premier League this season. It's he's definitely been the third choice behind Laporte and Diaz, in my perception anyway. Why is that, in your guys' opinion? What do you think Pep sees in it?
I think it's a combination of build-up and happiness. What do you call it? Morale.
Politics is the word you're looking for.
Okay, thanks.
Pretty much. Keep politics out of football and all that.
No, it's true. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, Stones is English. He's not going to want to go anywhere. He's signed a new contract. He's happy at City. Laporte is the opposite of that. You don't play him for 3 games. He's going to sulk. So I definitely think there has been an element of that in Laporte playing as much as he played. But I also agree with Mulv that, like, it's that idea that, the way that they train and they set up in those zones, right? And the way that they do their passing angles. A left footer plays the ball like that and play it around the press, right? A right footer is more likely to play the ball into an area where you're getting pressed and you're gonna lose the ball. But you can't. Nothing is a perfect system, if that makes sense. You lose something with everything, unless you've got 11 perfect players, and no team has that.
I've been wondering if this season, essentially, what we'll see is the Laporte keep him happy project for a while, and then come this end of the season, if we'll end up just seeing what we saw last season, where Stones and Diaz were so powerful, and it's almost like he's won a bit of trust back. And we'll see rotation, of course, we'll see, because there'll be injuries and so on, there'll be suspensions. But I'd genuinely be thinking, I wonder if he's just going to go back to him at the end, of the season. Because
I think Burnley might be very. So, firstly, we got to see if Stones is fit because of what's happened with England. But if he is fit, I think Burnley is almost the opportunity, because I think that Burnley's the type of team where you can make the argument to Laporte, I'm playing Diaz and Stones because this is just going to be high balls and long balls, and these are the best 2 guys in the air. And then, if you have the shirt, you have to lose the shirt in Pep's eyes. So
I think Stones is aerial record's ridiculous. I've forgotten stat, but I saw it the other day. He was the best in the league or something like that. It was. He's really improved on that front. He's so physical.
Him and Rodri both are just absolutely will dominate teams on those aerial balls. And so, I think Burnley is a good place to start, to Asan's point of weaving him in, and then maybe you don't worry so much about Laporte getting upset, although I still think it's going to happen. And to me, that's one of the reasons that I've just never liked Laporte as a player, is that it feels like there's just so much going on around him that it's just kind of a distraction. And even the saga of signing him, of where they almost sign him, and then he's like, I'm going to stay. And then, a year later, we go back to him because he just changed
in the
his mind.
mud. Wow.
What did he do to you? What did he do to you?
He's a top player, but
is he a case like he's like 8 out of 10 and there was a 9 or something like that? It's one of those things where he's still really good, but
look, if PSG came in and said, hey, look, our defenders are absolutely terrible, we will pay you an absurd amount of money to bring him in.
That'd be terrible bargaining for what it's worth.
If they wanted to buy him, I would not be upset at all. Like, I would be like, cool, Laporte, see ya.
No, you need another. No. Like, you can't sell Laporte unless you've lined up a world-class centre-back, because Laporte's a world-class centre-back. For all the little critiques that we might have, we can only have those critiques because we have John Stones and Ruben Diaz as well in the squad.
Yeah.
But you can't even countenance letting Laporte go unless you've got like another worldie that you're ready to bring in, and Ake ain't that guy.
So we just said, imagine Laporte's watching this somehow. If so, Emerick, hi, we love you.
Yeah. No, so I understand what you're saying, Asan, but we know he wanted to leave last summer, and if this season of him playing so much doesn't solve the problem, there are very few clubs that are I think he's going to want to go to, and I would rather sell him over to PSG than someone else in the Premier League, or I don't think anyone in La Liga could afford him with the current spending.
I don't think he's going anywhere, bro. Relax. I think that, having Laporte, Diaz, and Stones is incredible. Like,
agreed, 100%.
To have that, and I think that, we'll get to my lineup, but for me, it's very difficult to pick between Stones and Laporte, and it really is about form for me, because there've been moments where you've looked at Laporte and you've gone, he's undroppable, he's that good. And there's been moments where you've looked at Stones and you've gone, he's undroppable, he's that good. I'd like to know what you three think, but for me, Diaz is above the pair of them just for presence. Like, there's something about Ruben that just, like, he's Vinny. If he's fit, he needs to be there. And then it's one from those two. And to have both of them is just
Do we have an update on his fitness?
Sorry?
An update on Diaz's fitness?
Apparently back in training after international break. Is that right? That's what I read recently.
Yep.
I'm not
Do you
sure.
expect him to play on Saturday?
I wouldn't think so.
I could see him getting 45 to get his legs ready for
Atletico.
Yeah,
well, I guess we'll know
I do
in a couple
think
of days, won't we? Probably we'll see the photos and stuff.
One last thing, I think when you take Laporte out, I think you do heap a bit more pressure on Rodri in terms of distribution, particularly getting the ball out to Mahrez on the right hand side.
Really?
Yeah. Because I don't think Diaz,
disagree with that.
I don't think
disagree with that.
That's cool. Let me just finish it off. I don't think Diaz, when you stick him on the left, I don't think he's got a range that say Laporte has. So I think that then falls on Rodri. But
so I see it slightly differently in that I think that actually Stones is the best passer of the lot of them. So when you have Stones at the back, you actually make Rodri's life a lot easier because Stones will break lines. Stones will do basically, he'll do the job of the playmaker in the same way that Rodri can. That's my vibe on him. And the other thing with Stones is that I feel as though of all the centre backs, Stones is the one who can distribute the ball quickly, who is brave enough to take the ball and ping it immediately in a way that both Diaz and Rodri, they like to take a breath. They like to take a pause and then play that ball. So no, from a distribution point of view, I think Stone's a better passer than Laporte. I don't know if I'm right. I could be right. I could be wrong on that because I think again we're lucky in that it's very fine margin.
Yeah.
But for
I
me,
think they pass
Stones
differently for what it's worth. I think they pass differently.
I was going to say.
Yeah, Stones breaks the lines more. Laporte's more the diagonal, the long diagonal. Does anyone else remember? I swear when Laporte signed, his passing style was a little bit different. It feels like it has changed a little bit, maybe because the way City players changed, and we used to obviously play with wingers when he joined and all that kind of stuff. Proper out, left-footed, left and the right kind of thing. But it does feel like we changed a little bit. And Laporte, maybe it's just because the others have got better, but I used to feel wowed by Laporte's passing, but I don't as much personally anymore. Maybe because we've got used to it. Maybe there's an element of Edison,
I think we play differently.
Yeah, we do play differently, I agree. But for me, as also, you got to bear in mind as well, like, Cancelo can play the diagonal or whatever in a different way, but he can. And
true.
It's interesting because, like, obviously, we've all pretty much picked. I won't get onto mine, but it's pretty much the same back line. I'll go into Asan's team right now. I'll bring yours up, man. 1 second. And here we go. Here's Asan's team on screen right now. So this is the first one where there's been a few changes here. And I'm going to get in a minute onto. I want to ask Andrew and Mulv about an omission which has made it into Asan's team. But Asan, mate, go on, talk us through your big 11.
So I think that for me, when you talk about big games, I think what you've got to do is you've got to look at the season as a whole, and you've got to look at the moments in the season where you feel that the team have played at their optimum level. And for me, it's the 2 Chelsea games, right, where we absolutely smother them. Like they can't have the football, and if they can't have the football, they can't play. And it's a very simple thing, but that's why Sterling doesn't make it, and that's why Grealish makes it. Because as much as I love Raz, I think that when we've been at our best this season, it's a little bit death by 1,000 cuts. It's a little bit, you just can't have the football. And so if I look at, again, you take Gundo out, right? That's a little bit tricky because I wanted to try and figure out a way to put Gundo in, but it was, in a way, it was Gundo or Bernardo for me. And it's a little bit of form thing. I feel that Bernardo's form has dipped a little bit, but I'm hanging on to the idea that in the big games, in the big moments, he'll turn up, right? So if they're both like on top form, I pick Bernardo. So Bernardo, KDB, Rodri. I play KDB deeper. I was tempted to play him in the false 9, but ultimately I agree with Andrew that I want his distribution from deep, and also Kevin quietly has recovered his form and his legs. Like, I think a lot of people questioned whether he was past it or whether the physicality was getting to him, but he was injured at the start of the season, and I feel as though he's recovered his form again. So that's why I go with those 3. And then, I've been really down on Grealish this season because I don't think he's got the numbers to play in the front 3. But I think, weirdly, when we've been at our best this season, we've kind of almost gone, you know what? We back ourselves with the one chance to get the goal, and then you're not going to get the ball back. You're not going to get a sniff. And we've built confidence through possession. And so, obviously, Grealish there in that position in the front wide left in the front three, I think that he's very much about holding, keeping possession, maybe drifting central to help with possession in those areas, and maybe even breaking lines more from central areas. And I think the other thing is that you can swap Phil and Grealish then. You can, if you're playing Liverpool, for example, right, and Grealish is getting no joy, 15 minutes in, flip him. Yeah, you can do that. It's something that I think with Sterling, yeah, I obviously I've lost a little bit of confidence in him, and I think that in this possession-based system where kind of Mahrez is your key man, you almost, what is it? It's this. You focus everything over on that left-hand side and you keep the ball on that side, and then bang, somebody fires it over to the other side and Mahrez has got space. And that's been a relatively regular thing this season, and it's been something that's been really effective. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that. Obviously, I picked Stones and Diaz because for me, Stones on the right, I prefer Stones' distribution on the right to Laporte's on the left. And I think that Stones and Diaz defensively are much more solid. I'm going to shock you all, right? It was really hard for me to pick between Cancelo and Zinchenko. Really hard.
I don't blame you, to be honest.
I was really, because in my head, I'm kind of going, big game, big game. I almost go, you know what? You have to be a bit conservative. And Cancelo's a bit, you know, there's a lot of turnovers in Cancelo when he's not on his game. Yeah. And the problem is that with Cancelo, you don't know what you're going to get until he gets out of the pitch. When he's, you know, you can tell 10 minutes in when he's on it, he's on it. But when he's not on it, he's giving the ball away in areas where you just go, oh no. And then if you've got Laporte behind him, there's just going to be big gaps.
Yeah, and so I agree with you 100%, Asan, on that last point of you are taking a risk with Cancelo. Like, Cancelo has a greater variance than I think almost anyone in the squad. Of he can go down to like a 4 on his performance, but he also can literally break the chart at the top. And so for me, to your point, I agree that you need to be more conservative, which is why you don't play Laporte. Like, I think that's Laporte's biggest issue. And you may have almost convinced me on Grealish over Sterling. Like, I'm with you, and I'm thinking back to all those performances, and you might be right on. We've been at our best this season with Grealish, Foden, and Mahrez as our front three.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, my biggest thing, and one of the things I thought about with Sterling, was I can just think of so many big moments that Sterling has come through. And I think for a lot of us, we all think of the times that he doesn't come through. But Sterling, when he is in the moment and feeling himself, he's just like, we don't have anyone else like him in the squad.
So let me fire a question back at you. Let's say that it's 60, right? And it's a do or die game. Who would you rather have from the bench, Sterling or Grealish?
That's a good point, in my opinion.
Oof.
Because for me, I can see. Just to make the argument the other way around, for me, Grealish ain't doing it from the bench. Grealish needs the hour to get into the game, get into the rhythm and the system. I've convinced myself that Sterling in a Champions League quarter or a semi with half an hour to go, with the game kind of deadlocked, and feeling like you need somebody to just like start running at people and
he
cause
scores
chaos.
in that game, doesn't he? Somehow,
Yeah.
there's a moment. There's a moment. I agree with that. I think that there's an element of that responsibility. I think weirdly he'd be more likely to come alive off the bench in that kind of game than he would for starting. I mean, come on, the game would have settled, the nerves would have slightly dissipated a little bit.
I think he's shown a better mentality this season in terms of just getting his head down and playing when he gets the opportunity. Like Southampton in the FA Cup game is a great example where I was a bit worried because I was a little bit like, you know what? he might look at this and go, oh, it's that point in the season where I'm playing the FA Cup games, not the Champions League games. That kind of vibe, right? Not the big Premier League games. And the fact is that he came on and he performed like he had a point to prove. And so that's awesome. If you're going to get that Raz, then that Raz can come on for 30 minutes in a deadlocked game and rip it open.
Yeah, I would agree that Sterling is a much better sub than Grealish.
I was going to say Morv. So none of us so far have mentioned, maybe because it's self-explanatory, but none of us have mentioned Gabriel Jesus. Any particular reason did he cross your mind at any point? I just thought I'd go through the players that haven't been mentioned so far.
Yeah, we talked about him on Spaces we did with Main Road Ramble recently, and somebody asked how he might feature for the rest of the season. And he started well this season, but then went to the periphery pretty quickly. I can only really see him playing a part in Champions League games if Pep sees a reason to tactically use him for his pressing. I'm thinking back to Real Madrid a couple of seasons ago where I think he was man of the match in both legs against Real Madrid.
Fantastic.
It's fantastic. But that's the sort of role I see him playing the rest of the season rather than, I'll be honest, he wasn't in my thoughts. He was the very last name on my list. And I'm a big fan, but just I think form and
someone has to be, man, don't they?
Yeah.
You know what? So I thought about him. There was a consideration when thinking about what defines a big game, and I'll tell you why. Because, for example, take Liverpool, right? You look at Liverpool and you go, well, the thing with Foden playing the false nine is that he doesn't see a lot of the ball, right? And you want Foden on the ball as much as you can get him on the ball. So then you immediately begin to think, if you shift Foden left, because you're not shifting him right because you can't touch Mahrez, he's untouchable. And that's why Jesus can't get in there, because Mahrez is untouchable. Yeah. So then if you shift Foden left, then there's an argument that Grealish has done nothing in the false nine, right? So, and Kev, you lose a lot by playing Kev up there because then you've not got him deep. And maybe Gabby just being a nuisance, is the answer to create the space for the others. I mean, obviously, in the end, I didn't go with it because I still go back to this idea that you look at when you've been your best in a season, and because I think the players, on some level, they have a confidence and an automation that comes from, you know what you did against Chelsea. You know what you're getting here. This is a big game. You know they're going to be a threat going that way. You know you have to keep the ball. You know you have to be aggressive and you have to be intense. So, and that collection, because they've done it in those games, that's why I went with those players. But I definitely had a minute of thinking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is definitely more likely to make my team than someone else who hasn't been mentioned, although I think, Stephen, you have them in your team. So
I'll go to my team. My team, basically, pure disclaimer, probably wasn't even the team I'm going to pick, but essentially I didn't want to copy everyone else's because I saw the team that was editing the graphics and it's like, is it really fun just to have like essentially the same team loads of times? So I thought I'd just mix it up a little bit here. So I've cheated, but I'm the host, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. So I basically went for something a little bit different just to bring in a name or two that hadn't been mentioned so far. So I went for something like this. So I went for Ederson in goal. It's very interesting, by the way, that we've all got the same back six. I think that's pretty much settled. And that is, I kind of like the familiarity, that I like the consistency of that. Yeah. And I also like the fact that we've got a DM this season that we're actually probably going to play in these big games and not, worry who's going to be. Is it going to be Gundogan, Fernandinho, Rodri? It's going to be Rodri. And I think that's rightfully so. And I think that's something we just probably take for granted now, but it's really nice to see that. A familiarity to me, which I like. I went for Diaz and Stones as well. Stones for me, he's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I think he's earned, as we were talking earlier, he's earned a chance to be part of this end of the season running. And for me, as well as what Laporte brings, most of the games in this stage of the season, they're about grit and determination just as much as they are about quality. They really are. And there's no two defenders that you put together at centre-back who have that more than those two. There's a genuine chemistry between those two, which is sort of ignored a little bit by Pep, in my opinion, but you can see it. You can see it on the pitch. You can see that there's a camaraderie there. Those two clearly get on. Like, I think they are genuine friends in the way that Laporte, I know as a fact, he's quite an aloof person, Laporte. I'm sure he's relatively liked and so on, but he's not that same warm character around the dressing room. Doesn't matter because he's still quality. But I think when it comes to the business end of the season, I know it's a cliche, I do think those little extra connections, those little pats on the back from each other, I do think they make a difference, and it's team spirit essentially. So
on the crunch.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it does matter. And we all remember one of the most iconic moments of the season for me last year was that bit where Diaz, Stones, and Zinchenko all jumped in and they were trying to block it, and that was like pure. Oh, we're on the edge of something special potentially, and that was it. And it's really weird that image is in my head from last season more than most, and that was just essentially 3 defenders trying to block a shot. But those moments are when a season comes alive, and I do believe, that's why Stones for me, I think he'd step up. So I've gone for that. Cancelo, I've gone for Cancelo just because of his quality. It's as simple as that. And I think largely he's probably, once again, if you're going about politics, he's probably easier to put in than leave out, So there's an element of that. And mainly because he probably is a better player than Zinchenko, if we're being honest. He is a better footballer.
Walker, and you've got t-shirts to sell as well.
Exactly, and I've got t-shirts to sell, so there we go. All about that Cancelo culture, man. You've absolutely destroyed me with that then. Like, you've ruined my argument entirely. But ultimately, you're right. So yeah, but ultimately, Cancelo is a world-class footballer. Zinchenko probably hasn't played as much as he deserved, given how good he was in the running. But I think it's fair to say Cancelo's been better this season than last season. So the gap between the two performances, it's probably bigger. So I think Cancelo probably definitely earned that, and Rodri once again. I just went on the front five. I essentially just mixed up a little bit because I saw what you guys had put, and I didn't think anyone wanted to hear me talk about the same people over again. So I just decided to take a different approach for it. I thought, hey, if we're playing a big game, what do we need in terms of, do we need that control? Do we need a goal scoring instinct? And there's one guy that's been left out of the team who probably brings that in abundance more than pretty much any other midfielders that we got. Gundogan is an exceptionally gifted late into the box runner. He scored plenty of goals, and he brings control and he brings experience. And we saw his team talk as well in Champions League, semi-finals behind the scenes. And he has once again a credibility, a seniority, an eye for a goal, which we've been lacking recently. And once again, he's so good at potentially switching with De Bruyne. De Bruyne is there nominally as the striker, but he isn't the striker. Him, Gundogan, Bernardo, they can do that thing they did against United a while back, where they were just all rotating and going wherever they want to, essentially, with those two out wide. Foden, to me, out wide, I think we were all pretty much pining for that at the moment, really. Most of us are anyway, because I think it's also probably fair to say Foden's best games were in the big games last season in the Champions League. I thought he was excellent. The amount of jinking runs he went on when he was alive, and that's what probably really alerted most of the world seriously to his ability, and not just potential, his ability, because he was excellent last season in the Champions League. And likewise, Mahrez has been our most clinical, probably most consistently on player, some would say, especially at the front half of the pitch, for like a year and a half now. He was great from mid-season last onwards, and he scored more goals than Ronaldo, so you have to have him on the pitch. It's weird though, because we talked about Chelsea earlier, and Sterling was on the pitch for the Chelsea home game, I think, and he was excellent, not Mahrez. And that was Grealish and Foden, I think, and Sterling. But Mahrez, you just can't leave him out, can you? He scores too many goals at the moment. It just works, and he has got that big game mentality in the Champions League. And of course, he takes a fucking penalty, and that really helps as well when it comes to a big game. And you have to have that composure. Never used to take a penalty, but you can now. De Bruyne, well, you just get him on the pitch. He's Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, I could take variations in this. Grealish or Sterling could easily be in there as well. And I think, to be honest, all the teams that everyone named pretty much would definitely... They're all the teams that if Pep named any of them, I wouldn't complain. I just wouldn't. Because
you know what, though, Steve?
Go on.
I think your team is... No offense, lads. it's either my team or Steve's team in the Champions League final. Like, if it comes to the crunch...
I think Pep would probably do that for us, if I actually agree.
I think Stones Laporte obviously is a slightly different conversation, but in terms of the kind of the eights and the front three, I think because this season has been about control, I think if it's not, I think you're not going to see Sterling and Mahrez together. That's basically my vibe. In a big game, I'd be shocked if you see those two together. And I think that if Pep wants to put, and it could well be that I basically, actually, when I look at that team, I go, you know what? I expect to see that team. If we go deeper, into the Champions League. I definitely expect to see that team at some point, because at some point you're going to want Phil's penetration on the left. You're going to want to have the control in the middle and almost say to Foden and Mahrez, right, boys, we're going to do lots of things to get you into positions where you can do what you're best at.
For me,
so
KDB your 9, Steve?
Nominally, I mean, he was
Okay.
how he was last season in the Champions League as well, when he was often the false 9, but he wasn't. He played there and kind of didn't at the same time. He was just drifting all about, and there was often that big gap with a big kind of like U shape like that. But he's there normally, but mainly because I would rather Gundogan and Bernardo a little bit deeper than KDB. That's the reason why he's there, just because I prefer the other two deeper. Not because I think he's the best false 9, just because he's probably the one. He doesn't keep the ball as well as the others in that midfield and in that forward line. KDB's a little bit more turnover heavy, I would say, but he's the last man to get to. So we're further up the pitch already. I'm probably not quite as worried about that. Whereas I wouldn't want KDB losing the ball where Bernardo is, for example, because I think it would mess up with the transition. And also, I think once again, yeah, he's just I don't mind him being a little bit more leggy around top of the pitch compared to maybe a couple of the others. I think Gundogan once again just helps to control Bernardo, but it's Bernardo, isn't he? What were you saying? What was the reason for you asking that, man?
Oh no, because I can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. So, but yes, well, that's the reason. Yeah, he's there.
So, I agree with Asan's point of like looking at this team. I think this is kind of the platonic ideal of how Pep has kind of had the team play this season. My only concern with this, and it goes to, I've been watching some of the comments and people are saying Gundogan underrated and like, where's Gundogan? I love Ilkay Gundogan like so much. He's one of my favorite City players of all time. He plays with so much passion and drive. He's clearly a leader on the team, and not just of what he says, but what he does. But my biggest concern with playing him, and this lineup doesn't have that issue, hopefully, but has been that when we have played with Gundogan as the guy sitting next to kind of Rodri, because Rodri isn't a Fernandinho where he's sitting by himself. Like, you do have to have somebody with some legs next to him. We have looked the most open and have had so many issues in games where it is not Bernardo being the one next to him. And so my only concern with this is
for me, it is Bernardo next to him. I have Bernardo a bit deeper. But to me, Bernardo becomes a box-to-box midfielder. And Bernardo's not his most creative in these games anyway. Like, he tends to be, in the big game, Bernardo becomes Mr. Duracell buddy, doesn't he? He's legging it about everywhere. And I'm fine with that. And to me, like, I want Gundogan further up, actually. I want him, I want Bernardo alongside Rodri, because I just want that energy. I want that. And I think you can't really stimmy Bernardo anyway either. I think he becomes that in these games instinctively, because I think his passion takes control of him. So that's
another thing. I think that although I take your point, Andrew, I actually think that sometimes when we look to open, we tend to focus on individuals and go like, well, he's not fast enough, or what's Rodri doing there? Personally, I think when they don't press properly, we're open. And when they press properly, we're just not open. Like, if everybody positionally is exactly where they should be, if everybody is pressing in the way that they press, again, I reference the Chelsea games a lot, because ultimately I think that after Liverpool, Chelsea are the best team in the league, and we were at such a high level in both of those games. And I think that part of that was just the press. You remember that all the analysis halftime after the game is all about, well, look at City when they lose the ball. Look at how quickly they swarm around the Chelsea players and win the ball back again. So I think a little bit with and I think that there are a few kind of midfield combinations that I'll notice that people will go, oh, but there's not enough legs there. Oh, we're really open there. For me, that responsibility is a collective responsibility rather than an individual one. And now a question for the three of you. Your lineups, right? You both had Bernardo and Sterling on the left-hand side. I would argue Gundo and Sterling on that left-hand side are a better attacking combination than Bernardo and Sterling. I'm not sure how strong the creative relationship between Bernardo and Raz is. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So what do you do with Bernardo?
Well, you play the formation that. Well, look, for me, it's it's almost a thing where Sterling and Grealish they got an issue, and the issue they've got is that there's a bunch of other players that we all think on some level are better, and so therefore it's hard to see Sterling and Grealish being picked in the same team in a big game. Because again, we keep coming back to this idea that these selections are the big games in the running. So the big games in the running, it's hard to see Grealish and Sterling getting.
So it's not what you do with Bernardo; it's what you do with Sterling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say I don't think I get your point on the creative relationship between Gundogan and Sterling, but I think even if that's a slightly better attacking output, I think that presents other issues in the team. And so maybe to your point, that is why you don't play Sterling, because you can't play someone with him that unlocks him the same way. But I would also say Cancelo does enough creation on that side that you maybe don't have that issue. I was just looking at the Chelsea lineups, and the midfield was Rodri, Bernardo, De Bruyne, and then Foden and Grealish played both, and the only switches are Sterling played in the January match, and Gabby played in the September match.
Forgot about that, actually.
And so,
yeah.
And I think you could argue that if we're talking about kind of possession and defensive kind of stability and keeping the ball, the biggest issue, because I think you could say that Gabby gets in, is just that you can't not play Mahrez. Like that just Mahrez is
he's keeping him out.
Yeah, it's really I'm not Pep. Pep might do it at some point, but I won't like it. I think one of the issues that when we've had issues this season, ultimately we know what the issue is. The issue is putting the ball in the back of the net. Who do you trust when you've got a chance? I trust Mahrez. I do. Yeah. I think that 8 times out of 10 he'll bury it, and you need that. You really, 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 especially whilst Grealish is bedding in, right, and is showing almost no numbers, and you've got Foden doing all the donkey work in the false 9 position. You got to play Mahrez.
Well, and if you look at the Southampton, I was going to just say the Southampton match very quickly when Mahrez didn't play, and neither did Foden, and then you bring them on, and immediately the game was over.
Yeah, they really were. What I say?
A couple of quick ones.
Oh, go on, mate.
Go on, Wolf.
Sorry, just quickly. First, can I say this is why I love listening to Asan, because of the psychology and the mentality. When I did my research for this, I looked at the Liverpool match, right? A game that wasn't great. It was a 2-2. We weren't great. It was not particularly a negative thinking, but just that's where I went. This guy, he goes straight to the 2 Chelsea games where he's saying those are our best performances. A tough side, our best performances, and he's looking at it from that angle. That's just not how I'm wired, and I love it.
We can do to Liverpool what we did to Chelsea. Like I think that
Well, we sort of did at the time, didn't we? Because that was in the same run of games, the first one, wasn't it? And we did it in the first half, and then the referee did his little, I'm not saying off thing, but we were excellent, in that first half in particular.
Second one is as a question for the panel. Anything you would do differently if we're playing Atletico Madrid versus Liverpool? Or is that will that take us beyond time?
No, I mean I've got as long as you guys want, but that's a tough question, isn't it?
Because I'm thinking about the obvious. Liverpool's going to be a very open back and forth game. Atletico's going to be a lot harder to break down, a lot more stubborn. And my thoughts are, I would like Gundogan and I would like what I call the low block busters, which for me is Grealish, Mahrez, Gundogan. I want them against Atletico, which sort of puts Bernardo on the fringe. I would definitely have Bernardo in an open game against Liverpool. So just some of my thoughts.
So that flows nicely into a super chat that Steven received from Rohan Mattel, which is, what if you have to choose between Gundo and Bernardo? And I actually would say the same thing of I am much more willing to play Gundogan against a team like Atletico, where I think his interplay is an asset, and I'm less concerned. But I still probably would want to play Bernardo in that match. But like Bernardo, to me, like you can't play Liverpool and not have Bernardo in the team.
Yeah, it feels
like,
weird.
You absolutely have to have that energizer.
The idea
button.
of a big game without Bernardo just feels absolutely alien to me. I think maybe it's because I've become so enamored with what he brings in general. And also, by the way, thank you for the link there, Andrew. Rohan Mittal, thank you so much for the super chat. He asked the other two guys, by the way, he asked them, what if you had to choose between Gundogan and Bernardo? As in, like, I guess that was the only option, which one to choose. But for me, I choose Bernardo for what it's worth. That's the answer. I go for that big game mentality that Bernardo always brings. I mean, I always think one of the best performances I've ever seen in the City shirt is Bernardo against Liverpool at the Etihad. And
which one? Because I was going to say literally every Bernardo Liverpool performance is just outrageous.
Well, and given the fact that we're more likely to play that team than anyone else at the end of the season, well, there's your answer in it, I guess. So maybe that's the reason. But yeah, Bernardo. To be honest, I was speaking of the January the 3rd, 2019 one in the where we won 2-1 at home. Was this
best performance I've ever seen in a City shirt, aside from Fernandinho in the same game.
It was like a complete midfield performance. You couldn't really ask for much more. And for me, I always go for Bernardo, mainly just because, as Gaz just pointed, he's kind of like Gaz just put in the comments, he's captain shithouse, and I think there's an element of that you just need in a big game. I think you do need that.
Are we sure that Steven doesn't also have a Bernardo shirt he needs to sell?
Do you know what? I'm not worried, but hey, I can make a Gundogan one. I've got to make one just to like literally cancel all ideas of bias out. So there you go. 1 to 11's coming up of shirts soon. I get all these on t-shirts, all these names. But going back to because I've got the control of the editing, my 11 here, and I didn't really think, to be honest, about the the links going forward in terms of like I wasn't thinking about it. I'd be lying if I said I was. But when I look at my team there, coincidentally and conveniently, it does work out quite well. I think Bernardo's at his best when he's linking up with Mahrez on the right. Actually, I think Bernardo is really good with those little triangles, and I think Bernardo's just better on the right, full stop, of the false eights compared to being on the left. So I think that naturally works up really well because Bernardo, Mahrez, Walker, that's just a really, you've got the hard work, the balance, the grace, and the pace, of course, of Walker on that right hand side. He kind of, De Bruyne playing as the false nine as well, kind of doesn't get in the way of those little triangles around there. Which he can sometimes do because he's a little bit sloppy and he's always looking for the final pass. Well, on the left, you've got Gundogan looking up with Foden. And think back to the Dortmund game. Who was it? It was Gundogan and Foden playing those little, both on that side with a deep ball to the back post. It was those two there. And in my head, I always think of Gundogan scoring slightly from the inside left. So he's always on that side playing his best and he's kind of whipping it into the far corner. And Foden on the left, well, he has the intelligence link up with Gundogan and Cancelo. So I think the balance there is really good. The other thing I would say, of course, is Gundogan's just not played much, and mine is based off last season. It's not based off what we've seen this season so far. But that doesn't mean it can be really useful. It can be really impressive. And in the same way that we talk about Stones here on the video being essentially the fall guy to Laporte, maybe because of politics, I think almost certainly Gundogan is the fall guy to Bernardo and KDB, probably because of politics as well, and not because he doesn't deserve to play. It's just because you can't not play Kevin De Bruyne, and Bernardo was the unhappy guy, and once again, maybe you can't play him. So I think Gundogan is probably the easier guy to leave out, and Stones is the easier guy to leave out. But come the end of the season, I would not be surprised if both are playing regularly, because I think that's when Pep will actually get a little bit more, I don't give a shit what you guys say, I'm playing the team I want to play. So I think that's where we'll see less, we'll see less happy faces, so to speak. But I don't think Pep will care. So,
looking at your team, Steve, I'm just looking at it and the connection thing, and I started looking at it from the perspective of like FIFA Ultimate Team, where you get the little line that says like the chemistry and everything. And actually, I think it's convincing me that this is the best way to set up for a game like this.
I win
because from front to back, you actually have those connections. So you've got Stones and Walker, who complement each other style-wise. They're both English. They're international teammates. They know how to play with one another. It's the exact same thing with Cancelo and Diaz. Rodri is Rodri, like he's a rock. Don't have anything to worry about there. And then, but he links well with Bernardo and Gundogan, and we've seen that midfield thrive when KDB was out.
Yeah, absolutely did.
And I think part of my issue with why I didn't even consider Gundogan is I was just trying to I was like, well, De Bruyne has been so good and Bernardo has been so good, and that's been our kind of best midfield this season, that I just wasn't even really considering moving De Bruyne forward. Obviously, I do think you lose a little bit if he's not deep, but if you just kind of give him the Messi role where he can just do whatever he wants and it doesn't matter, I think ultimately that this lineup does work.
So one thing I would say, if we're going to go with that, I'd swap Gundo and KDB.
Yeah, no, I would as well. Because I think that they are free.
I think
it's hard to say.
Yeah, but I think I don't know if you've noticed, but I think there was certainly one game, maybe a couple of games this season, where Bernardo was the false nine, right? And I think that pushing Bernardo up to do that, you lose a lot of legs in midfield. And I think you've got to keep Bernardo in midfield, and you've got to keep the legs. And so therefore, I'd play Gundo as the false nine. Just to go back to Mulv's question of Atletico versus Liverpool, Atletico's a weird game in the sense that I think that your Sterling Mahrez lineup, if we see it at home against Atleti, where I think that Pep will probably go, these guys are going to play a bit like Burnley. They're going to be a bit shithouse and very, very deep. And if they're going to play like that, then maybe I just, you go with the dribblers and you go, right, boys, you need to cause chaos here. And you maybe concede a little bit of control to give you a little bit of that dynamism that having both Sterling and Mahrez on the wings would give you. So that will be the difference. I think that against Liverpool, I almost feel that you can toss a coin between the lineup I picked and the lineup that Steve picked.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
I do. Yeah, I do think that the Madrid game is weird as far as big matches go, because there's not another quote unquote big team in the world that's going to play the way Simeone is going to set them up. And I mean, they are in good form, but I watched both legs of the Atleti United game, and I mean, they're just not. We got lucky in terms of teams we could have drawn. I think they're still a danger and a threat.
Yeah,
but
twins in the same that the shy. That's the exact words United friend of mine.
Yeah,
they're not shy, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
No, they are just shy.
I'm hedging my bets, mate.
I think that against Atletico, it's about what we do. It's got nothing to do with what they do. It's very simple, right? You go back and you think about the Bayern Atleti game and Atleti knocking them out. It had nothing to do really with what Atleti did. Bayern, if you don't finish, you don't score the goals, you miss penalties, miss open goals, you miss one-on-ones, you're not going to win a Champions League tie. And so I think that in that sense, it's that's what, just to go back to the how you differentiate between Liverpool and Atleti. For me, Atleti is maybe the game where you concede a little bit of control to go a bit more all-out attack. Whereas Liverpool, you want as much control as you can get. I can't wait for the Liverpool game. I have both of them. I have to say that I think that, I don't know, like I'm interested to see how our weaknesses and their weaknesses stack up against each other. I think that's going to be really, really fascinating. I know this sounds mad, but they have played this defensive line this season, right, with an openness in midfield that it wouldn't surprise me if we scored 2-3 goals against them quickly.
I hope so.
But then going the other way, right, you look at, I would say the left-hand side of our defense has been the weakness, if you want to call it a weakness. If they've got Trent and they've got Salah over there, they can also do, like we saw what they did. We did what they did at Anfield, but I don't think Salah's in the form.
Trent didn't play. Milner was the right back.
That's right. You know what? Trent might not play this time either.
Yeah, there are those fitness rumors that he's in a rush.
Well, James Pearce did a piece in The Athletic today where he said, more or less, he said it's unlikely that he's fit enough to start that game.
That's interesting.
Is he a
bit
like
for some reason? I just don't. I'm cynical. I presume it's just bullshit, but hopefully it's not right.
Well, yeah, but you know what? The thing is, my starting point is you don't lie about they're not going to lie about hamstring injury, right? If he's injured and he's got a hammy, he's got a hammy. So if he's got a hammy, then you run a big risk.
Did he actually say hamstring, by the way, specifically?
Yeah.
If so, that instance, not just a knock.
Yeah. So then, if it's a hamstring, then there's a lot of football to be played after the City game. It will be a madness to rush him back, to have the hamstring go again and lose him for a month, for example.
Particularly in that position where he is going to be up and, I mean, that's Liverpool basketball style football at its finest. The outside backs, like he's going to be running up and down, particularly in a game like.
This is why I
the City
picked
match.
Sterling in defense of my lineup, because I thought about Sterling versus Foden on the left, and I just thought it's Trent, and that's probably who you want to target. I just gave the edge to Sterling for the tracking Trent up and down. I know Foden could do it, but he has been caught out once or twice this season, not tracking his man from the left side. So.
Yeah. But I'd almost, I view the Trent side of the pitch when he's playing slightly differently. Is that I'd cheat the other way. I'd go, you know what? Somebody back here has to deal with Trent so that whoever's playing on that side can cheat, can stand behind him, because he leaves so much space, that it's criminal not to try and exploit it.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we've got a bunch.
Is there anybody that we haven't discussed? Like I was looking at our squad, and I actually think there's nobody we haven't discussed.
Just the people like Stefan, Ake, people like Fernandinho.
Right. Well, so like Stefan's not going to make it. Clearly,
No.
I love him, but he's not in contention. Ake played great in the last match the Netherlands had, but like no.
There's one thing. What about if our three main centre backs are fit? That Stones at right back thing.
I would be fuming about that. I would be physically angry.
Mm-hmm.
But I can
the first Madrid leg. First Madrid leg, I actually would be okay with it if Walker can't play.
Yeah, we've got no choice there for what it's worth. But I mean, in general, if Walker's available and Pep is still angry at him and doesn't play him, and given how good he was in Champions League last season, and given how he's the best physical defender in world football,
then they've got to, if they do that, then they've got to sell Zinchenko in the summer. I'm personally. I don't know if you guys
have you just seen this, by the way? There's some rumours going around a couple of hours ago about West Ham being linked to him. It's only some rumours, but
£4 million.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That.
Is this going to be the summer, do you reckon, guys? When
wait, did you say 40 or 4?
City claim to value the player at 40 million, which of course we won't get. We're not getting to 40 million for Zinchenko, but maybe we might get 30 or something like that. But
I think he's in for life.
In for life.
He just loves it.
Locked in.
He loves it. He loves winning trophies. He won't go anywhere where he's not going to be guaranteed.
Yeah, but you know what, bro? Like, I think that with the best will in the world, I think that part of having a squad is having options, right? And when the manager decides you're not an option for me anymore, the player's got to go. Like, I feel like that about Gabriel Jesus. Like, I know that he's a good guy and everybody loves him, right? But I'm like, if you're not playing him, make sure you sell him this summer, because we like we need to be in a situation where come next season, when a game is tight and Palace is happening and it's not happening, you need something from the bench. You really need something from the bench. You can't be in a position where the coach goes, yeah, I don't fancy any of these guys. The guys who are on the pitch are going to have to do this.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would agree, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case with Zinchenko, because I think the issue you've got, and Asan, you've talked about this and we've discussed it on podcasts and space in the past, but the reason that Cancelo, like that we only have 3 backs right now, is that Walker plays so many matches at right back, and Cancelo is a guy that like he's not going to be happy if he doesn't play a lot, so he's playing at left back.
That's a fair shout.
And I don't know who you could bring in to back up Cancelo that is anywhere near Zinchenko's quality.
We are going to sign left back at some point, though. I'm almost certain.
Yeah, I would argue.
It just feels written in the stars. It's almost like the club feel like they need to have to do, and it'll be they'll want a traditional left-footed attacking left back. And,
completely.
And I don't know when it'll happen, but they just will. It could be a couple of years.
I think that.
But
I don't know that it's the case, because I think they're going to keep Cancelo at left back.
You're going to sign a right back.
I think they'll sign a right back. I think you phase out
USA.
Walker.
Come on.
You bring somebody in.
What's he called again? The one you want? Is it Dest or something?
No, just the link up between me and the dead dog.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No,
sorry, I thought you were about
the only outside back that's a U.S. player that said he should. He's not even good enough. But Jedi Robinson, the ex-Everton
I've honestly
player,
never heard of him. Jedi, is he called? You say he's called Jedi.
So his real name is Anthony Robinson.
I know him. I'm about to say Jedi. I was like, the fuck is he?
So he's now one of those players that the nickname has become his first name.
Is he the
so
Fulham
Jedi
guy?
Robinson. Yeah, he's a left back. He's good, but he's not quality. But no, there's no. To me, Zinchenko is almost irreplaceable in terms of the quality and the consistency and the ability that he is cool being the utility man who's not going to play a lot.
It's hard, that isn't it? It's hard.
So I just don't think that. I think that with Cancelo, I think that they've made the call this season, and he's been super effective out there. But I think they sign a left back this summer, and I think they say to Cancelo and Walker, "Right, boys, fight it out." Really, and obviously you have the option. You have the option. You know you can play Cancelo on the left. You know it's horses for courses, but ultimately, I think they sign a left back this summer, and they don't sign somebody who is like a Zinchenko utility player. They sign a left back, and they go, "You have got the opportunity to fight for the number one spot." And if they don't do that, I'll be furious. Like, I think that we're getting to that stage in the in Pep's arc as manager where we've almost every season gone, you know what? We're going to leave a couple of weaknesses and Pep, do your genius magic thing. I think we're getting to the stage where you just got to finish the squad, man. Buy a proper left back and a proper number 9. Buy a holding midfielder and go, let's go.
I mean, but I think the issue is
that's not what Pep thinks. That's not how he thinks. He doesn't think of left backs as traditional left backs. He just he loves a midfielder there, doesn't he?
And also, I think Asan and I know our read, and Steve and I talked about this when we talked Haaland a few days ago. But like, I think the three of us, I don't know, Mo, how confident you are, but if you are signing Haaland, like that is a huge outlay. And so then, to me, I think in terms of our priorities, it actually goes striker clear of everything else, way ahead. I think a backup DM / box to box guy is then the next priority. Yeah. And then only after that do you have a left back as maybe needing to come in. And I just don't know that you can get all three of those deals done this summer.
How many games has Rodri missed since he joined the club through injury?
Not many.
Not many, but if he has a serious injury and Fernandinho leaves, like you only have Gundogan in that role, and that's not going to work.
I agree. I think but I don't think that you like the Basmati Rice shouts and players like that. It's not going to work for me. I think that you buy a Gundo type. Sorry, go on.
I'm talking like a 6 to 8 where you can play him with Rodri, because the other thing is it's not just that Rodri doesn't get injured. Rodri is young. So you can't buy somebody and say like, hey, you're going to sit for a couple of years and then come in. So to me, someone like a Jake Decore, who is a young guy, he can kind of play the 6 role. He can play the 8 role. You could have a double pivot. Jake Decore, he's at Lens right now.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest. I'm sorry.
So he was one of the like breakout stars of AFCON this year. Last season, he had the best defensive midfield season of any midfielder in a top 5 league in the past 5 seasons in terms of defensive stats plus ball progression. He will be a 75 million pound player if City doesn't sign him like this summer, because someone will sign him this summer for 30 to 40, and then he's going to be a world class player. I mean, he's that good. He's actually sitting next to Fofana at Lens in a double pivot. But someone like that, where you can play.
Yeah, City lad.
Yep. But where you can play them with Rodri, but they can play multiple roles. To me, that's what City needs in this squad, because Gundo's getting older.
Oh, do you know what? I recognize him now. You said that. I thought you said Jake. I thought not Jake. I was like, who the hell is this Jake guy? No, I've seen his name on Twitter, but I've not watched him play. So
Jake Decore.
I was like,
you know what? I would save all my money for Jude Bellingham for the summer of 2023.
Oh, that'd be nice.
My vibe on the midfield front, because I think that Bellingham's going to end up costing really silly money, but I also think that Bellingham is the absolute real.
He's my Ferner replacement. Him. I know he's not even a Ferner right now, but he's my Ferner.
No. He's the thing for me is that Bellingham is perfect because he's technically good enough that you can easily play him as an 8, but he's almost like Vieira in his stature at times. Yeah. So no,
Do you think if we went to Dortmund this summer and said, look, we know you got to sell Haaland, but what if we do a package deal here? You know, we'll just take them both.
They'd fucking hate us, man. They'd absolutely hate us. They
175 mil for both of them.
Oh,
maybe throw in a free.
They'd be like,
maybe throw it in a free Gio Reyna.
Dortmund really don't like us. I don't think. I think that you what you need is Haaland tapping him up. You need Begarestain all over the agent.
Sancho for 7 million, man. They got
a release clause.
Does he have a release clause?
Bellingham, no.
Anyone know?
I don't think so, no.
Hey, that's a good question, actually, because maybe somebody in the comments will know. Has he signed another new contract since he arrived?
He hasn't. And I just looked and... June.
Let's have a look. When did he actually...
It looks like he did.
Oh, did he?
He did extend his
silly
contract.
idea, wasn't it?
Right, no, but here's the thing. So I think the first deal, he's not in a position to ask for a release clause because they're going, no, you're coming from Birmingham City. We'll see about that. But I think if the agent is smart, the deal last summer, there's something on paper that says there's a certain fee that triggers us to be allowed to speak to the other club.
When I googled him, all the links or the rumours are Liverpool, and annoyingly that would fit really, really well. But I hope it didn't go for that.
So, Sebastian Kell at Dortmund, who's their head of first team football, in October said there is no release clause in the contract, and any club looking to sign the English teenager will have to negotiate with Dortmund's management.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he said so. The exact quote is: "Borussia Dortmund player remains a Borussia Dortmund player. There is no paying threshold, no release clause. He is loved here. He is exactly the right place."
No, he's not. He's not going to win anything there.
No.
We all know he's going to.
He's in exactly the right place. He's in exactly the right place, so you can flip him and make 100 million euros on your 7 million investment.
He'll be 19 in the summer. He's getting old a little bit now as well, so he's got.
I think he'll go somewhere where they don't have a 6 at all, so he can be the man.
Yeah,
so I think we'll be looking just below that.
You reckon? Because I look at the thing that I keep thinking about is I've got a slight worry that Bernardo, even if it's not this summer, it's next summer that he's off. Yeah. And you look at Gundo's age and you go, wow.
We've got an overhaul coming soon.
I think the midfield, I actually think that position, not the number 6 position, but the kind of the Gundo position for me, which is a player who can do both of those roles at a world-class level. I think that's priority.
In the comments, Justin Young said Bellingham is not a 6, LMAO, and he isn't right now. You're right, but then Fernandinho wasn't. The point is, you're looking for a profile and what could be a City 6, and Fernandinho.
Very
I don't think that.
I'd go get Tielemans.
You know what? I would do him because he's going on a free, isn't he? That would be he can play both those roles, and I rate him, and it'd be an easy one to do. Didn't we get linked with him recently?
Yeah, I just did. I just linked him.
Official. Get it on the aggregators right now via this podcast.
The point about that comment of he is not being a 6 is that anybody who's going to play 6 for City likely is not a traditional 6 anywhere.
I don't think that when you look at players
that wasn't a 6, by the way. He was alongside Partey and everything, wasn't he, Atletico?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He played in a 2. Yeah. But I think in general that if you look at players that City targeted and have targeted, generally what you're looking at is players that are really versatile. And I think that when you look at Rodri, for City tend to have one specialist, but you're not going to have 2 specialists in the same side. More likely, you're going to have a lad who can actually become the guy who sits next to Kev and becomes the next Kev, but can also drop deeper and play in the 6 when Rodri needs a rest.
Yeah, and actually, that Jude's age would work well for, let's say, a Bernardo does leave. If you can do the deal at that point where you can bring him in, he's next to Kev, can develop, but he can also spell Rod. Like that deal makes sense, and the space is probably there if you do the deal next summer, because Gundogan and Ferna are basically guaranteed to be gone at that point. I mean, Fernandinho definitely will. Gundogan can maybe extend, but at that age, his legs are.
Yeah, he'll become more of a little bit like Fernandinho is now, have that professionalism and have that presence in the squad. I think I said at the very top, you wait a year and you sign Bellingham, and I think that you do what United did with Sancho, which is that you do the really long courtship where you're basically
inevitable. Basically, it's just like
you do a year.
You're just wearing down, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Where at the end of the season, the player goes to Dortmund and he goes, "What's the valuation? Because I want to leave and I want to go to Man City and they want to sign me." And you put Dortmund in a position where they have to negotiate.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly the right thing. And if we sign Haaland, then you have Haaland, Foden, hopefully still Sterling, Stones. You have an ex-Dortmund player who made the move in Gundogan. Like, you have multiple people that can be in his ear.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
selling him on it.
I'd bring Reina at the same time. At summer of 2023, I'd go and I'd say Bellingham and Reina, come. Bernardo's off. Gundo's staying, but he's old.
400 million, they'd be like, fuck off. Like, stop it.
If anyone
just hate us so much.
If anyone here watching has not seen Gio Reyna's run through the entire midfield of Mexico, it was
Mario Star stuff, wasn't it? Mario Kart Star stuff. He was off.
Yeah, listen, you signed Gio Reyna just for the players. What is it called? The Players' Voice article that he did.
Players Tribune.
Oh yeah, Players Tribune thing that he did a year ago, 2 years ago. Dig that out, find it. That's why you signed Gio Reyna. As soon as he's ready to leave Dortmund, he's got the talent clearly.
He also is. City. So I was listening to a great interview that they talked about him because he played that incredible ball across the face of the goal during the U.S. men's match that then didn't even end up on frame. And he just about lost it on the other player. And someone they were talking to was saying he is the most competitive player in the U.S. men's national team squad.
He also fits my theory, by the way, of young players who I think will reach the top are the ones where their dad was a professional that wasn't the superstar, but it was really good and a hard-working player. And like Haaland and Delap, Reina, these all players, they were all reliable captain types as opposed to the superstars. And I honestly feel like that's the thing we're going to see more of. Young players who they already have that natural talent, but then they get more education that they ever got as young players and they step up. But we've gone into the transfer talk, which is always how it's going to descend. We'll round this video up nicely. We'll go back through the teams one more time. Both I'll do a quick poll actually in the chat. I'll quickly type it up. Which team would you
while you're doing that, Steven, I just was going to say on the Reina part, the other thing that would bode well is that when his father was the technical director for City Football Group's MLS team, he still didn't try to sign his son because he knew his son's career would not develop well if he locked him down to that contract. And so that is much like the Haaland example. The decisions are made based on how do you make the player's career kind of succeed overall rather than money or kind of not the player's own development. And so
hey, whilst he's doing that,
I'm ready to go.
I'm gonna ask Mauve. Oh. Yes or no? We're going to sign Haaland?
Yes.
Andrew, yes or no?
100%.
Go on, man. I like it. Steve? Yes or no?
Man? Why not? I think it's more likely not to more than right now, but I've fucking been hurt before and I'll be hurt again and I'm ready for it. So I put it in the poll in the community, basically. I put which team do you prefer in a big game? There's no right answer. I've got Andrew and Moles because they both went for the same team. It's currently on screen right now. I'll just show you so there's no cheating there. You can see
I'll vote for myself quickly.
I voted for Steven, just to be perfectly honest. I did not even vote for
Look at you kissing my ass on my own channel. I love it. More of it, please. So you got the team there, as you can see on screen. I'll bring Asan's up right now. Here's Asan's. As you can see, it's Ederson, Diaz, Stones, Cancelo, Walker, Rodri, Bernardo and De Bruyne, Foden, Grealish, Mahrez. I'll run through theirs one more time. Sorry, I didn't mention it. It's Ederson, Diaz, Stones, Cancelo, Rodri, Walker. Then it's Bernardo, De Bruyne, Sterling, Foden, Mahrez. And mine is on screen right now as well, where I went a bit different. Ederson, Diaz, Stones, Cancelo, Walker, Rodri, Gundogan, Bernardo, and then Foden, De Bruyne, and Mahrez. So I'll let... I think I'm winning. Yeah.
I just lost it at a comment in the chat that says thick and busty Norwegian machine.
Oh, that's like those adverts, those like in your area kind of thing. There's a fitting machine in your area, and he's single and he wants some good Braut, whatever that means. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I said winning because mine's winning. That's Freudian slip there for you. Currently 58% on my team there. Honestly, I'll be honest disclaimer. I chose this team because the other guys had chosen other teams, and I didn't realize how much it worked until I actually talked it through in the video and thought, that's a good team, actually. I did all right with this. But I was just trying to spice it up a little bit. Thank you so much, everyone who's watched, and thank you so much, of course, to Mulv alongside me here. Mulv.
Thanks.
Asan down there. Cheers, Asan.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you.
And Andrew below me. Of course, I put a link in the description to all the social channels, Main Road Ramble, Noisy Neighbours, and 9320 repping on the channel today. Thank you so much to the guys. Thank you to everyone who's watched as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Go and give those guys a follow. The links are in the description. Download World Football, of course. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. It's been a pleasure. Guys, have a wonderful evening in a bit.